sorry, babe. I'm an ambitious girl. You're just small time.
Over the last 25 years, every GTA story had one thing in common. Someone betrays the protagonist. Today, I'm going down the whole cast to figure out who that will be in GTA 6. Each character will be judged on 3 factors: their relationship to Jason and Lucia, behavior that suggests they could betray someone, and incentive for them to gain from betraying the protagonist. Some candidates are obvious, some will surprise you, and one of them even surprised me. Brian Heater is Jason's boss at the beginning of the story, providing him with housing in exchange for work. One thing jumps out at me right away. Why did Brian set up housing for him instead of just paying him like a normal job? He wants to make it harder for Jason to leave. Not only does he provide housing, but in the beginning of trailer 2, he uses the housing to tell Jason to get back to work. Brian probably has some type of affection for Jason, but their relationship is not even close to being on equal terms. He also used other people in the same way as Jason, so this is repeated behavior for him. I don't think Brian had to cross every single one of his workers, but Jason has been around long enough to trigger a betrayal. Brian's incentive is twofold: to silence someone who knows how he operates, and satisfy the emotional damage that Jason leaving would do to him. He may be old enough to regulate most of his emotions, but Jason leaving would create an entirely new feeling. Most of his other workers probably quit early or died on the job. Jason is the only one who would leave in a position of strength, and on top of that, it would feel like what Brian offered him wasn't enough. I expect Brian to take that as an insult, when it's really not from Jason's view. A betrayal that truly stings should feel personal to the protagonist. Confronting Brian is inevitable for Jason and Lucia to start moving up, but his betrayal won't be the one that defines the story. Cal Hampton is Jason's friend and Brian's associate, so when the conflict between Jason and Brian happens, Cal will have to pick a side. He may be defined as an associate of Brian, but I doubt that Brian sees him as an equal, or splits the drug money equally with him, because Cal is okay with less. He'll witness Jason and Brian going at it, and become the guy who decides the winner with his computer skills. Jason and Cal's relationship seems close enough for a betrayal to actually hurt, which sometimes makes it more likely to happen. His behavior is described as paranoid, believing in conspiracy theories and such. This could be interpreted as him being the type to panic and turn on people, but it could actually become a good quality. He can help Jason and Lucia by tipping them off about something they would have missed. The other notable part of Cal's bio is that his desire to stay at the bottom clashes with Jason's new plans. But if he's okay at the bottom, he can still be okay with more, and Cal gets to stay behind a computer either way. This indifference is why Brian couldn't offer him money to betray Jason. But what about later in the story? If there were an incentive, the story needs someone to find Cal and threaten him. Since he's hard to find as a hacker, and can't be bribed, I believe he'll stick with Jason and Lucia to the end. Booby Ike has an empire in Vice City, which means Jason and Lucia will most likely work under him after they deal with Brian. Despite being directly involved in crime before, Booby takes pride in the legitimacy of his current businesses, and he extends opportunities to people who can help him. Not only for Jason and Lucia, but for Draquan as well, and Draquan is the key to why Booby might become our enemy. They share a music partnership called Only Raw Records, but Draquan is not satisfied with his current position. He wants to keep moving upward. This means a falling out will take place between the two of them, forcing Jason and Lucia to pick a side. If Booby Ike has the money and power that the three of them want, I expect Jason and Lucia to team up with Draquan. They'll take down Booby Ike and split up any assets they can get from him. It'll be interesting to see how they resolve that, and who ends up owing who. Booby is more cool-headed than Brian, so he'll only be hostile if his empire, or something else he cares deeply about, is threatened directly. But when Draquan wants to break off the partnership, whether he's honest or sneaky about it, Booby will personally feel hurt. After all, Only Raw Records is the passion project he's most invested in. The reason his betrayal score isn't higher is because in that scenario, he'd be attacking Draquan first, and us as an indirect consequence. He's an antagonist who will be forced to return to the crime world he tried to leave, but he won't make the first move for personal gain if he already has what he wants. When it comes to Only Raw Records, real dimes are the actual engine. Booby and Draquan are relying on them to produce the next big hit, instead of having a more spread out portfolio. So how do they factor into this? By being opportunistic and being loud. They shook down local dealers for money, and they're all over social media. so they could cause problems for Jason and Lucia directly, because criminals want to stay on the low and Real Dimes wants to do the opposite. Or they could try to blackmail Jason and Lucia at some point, which would match their shaking people down behavior. If this duo makes a big move, I would expect it to be trying to take only raw records for themselves, since they're the ones who decide whether it succeeds or not. But they have the weakest direct connection to Jason and Lucia, which makes a direct betrayal less likely. What if one of the protagonists betrays the other? They do have slightly different motives after all. Jason wants the fulfillment of being involved with Lucia, while Lucia is more so in it for the money. Jason seems to entirely lack a reason to betray Lucia, because his priority is intact before he and Lucia reach the top. He wants to protect Lucia more than anything, so if he actually betrayed her out of self-preservation, it would be very unsatisfying and out of character. He's going to stay loyal, even when things get really dangerous. I'm not entirely sure we can say the same about Lucia. The last time she stood up for someone close to her, she went to prison, and now she only makes smart decisions, meaning she regretted fighting for her family and viewed it as not smart. At the same time, I don't expect Lucia to plan a betrayal against Jason from the beginning of the story. Their ideal outcome is to live the good life with each other once they're done doing crime, and Lucia will try to protect that possibility for as long as she can. I can assure you that the story will apply a ton of pressure on their relationship, and try to force a situation where Lucia has to decide if Jason is worth giving up on. Someone who's already been to prison will go to even more extreme lengths to not return there. And for a character who relies on logic to cope with her prison experience, there's potential for her to get trapped by it. She'd have to go against what's best for herself and her plan in order to do what's best for Jason. Whether Lucia betrays Jason will be a central question throughout the story, and we might even get different endings. Her choice will depend on whether she gives into her fear from the past, or risks herself completely to try and save both of them. Raul Bautista seems to have all the makings of someone who would betray us. Actually, he's almost too suspicious. So let's start building the case against him. Out of everyone we've discussed so far, Raul should be the closest one to Jason and Lucia. He'll be working together with them on several heists, such as the one in this clip. Jason and Lucia messed up an easy score at the beginning of the story, so if there's anyone they'll need help from, it's an experienced veteran like Raul. The amount of time they spend with each other is meaningful, because Rockstar wants the big betrayal to come from someone close enough to really sting. If Raul does become our enemy, he'd be the most skilled and dangerous one to fight directly. There's also a conflict of interest between what Raul wants and what Jason and Lucia want. Raul is reckless. He wants to keep taking bigger risks for bigger scores. He probably could have retired by now, but he loves the thrill more than the actual money. Jason and Lucia will be on board with Raul's way of doing things at first, since he gives them the fastest way to make money. The problem comes later, when Jason and Lucia want to exit the crime world or pull their chips from the table. Jason will probably be the first one who wants to slow down and protect her from the danger that comes with Raul. However, I expect Lucia to have a strong connection with Raul, since they seem to have the most in common, and she hasn't been tied to any other characters. That leaves her caught in the middle of the conflict. The story should make it difficult for them to actually escape the crime world, so they'll likely be forced to double down. Someone who joins us on a heist also has the potential to turn the tables on us in the middle of it. Raul might be experienced enough to put the heat on Jason and Lucia, while he runs off with all the cash instead of just a third of it. Or maybe there's a situation where he knows they can't all make it out, so he saves himself instead of going down with them. When his bio says things like "a professional adapts" and "life is full of surprises," those can be interpreted as him adapting in a way that hurts Jason and Lucia. He has the relationship, the behavior, and the incentive to pull off a betrayal, and yet, I'm still not sure he actually will. I want to believe that Raul will stick with us to the end. There are a couple factors that might save him. Guys like Brian and Booby will just be giving missions while they sit in their lounge chairs, but Raul is willing to put his own boots on the ground and risk himself alongside us. They'll be going through a lot of shared danger, and that usually produces a genuine bond. Raul would certainly gain from betraying Jason and Lucia on a heist, in money or safety, but someone who truly wanted either of those would put their own safety first before the money, instead of being reckless. With his experience level and the amount of banks he's already robbed, I don't see him as someone who fears death or needs money enough to betray someone. And although he has a different philosophy from Jason and Lucia, that doesn't have to result in them killing each other. This can get resolved if the story requires them to take a huge risk anyways, and removes the option to back out early. I want to call up Raul and get him on board for the final mission, not have him be the final boss. So if Brian's betrayal happens early, and Raul sticks with us to the end, then which character will truly betray Jason and Lucia in the way that hurts the most? When I looked at how everything lines up, it shocked me how well Draquan Priest fits the criteria. The first thing that needs to be established is his connection to the protagonist. Most of the characters in this video are not seen with Jason or Lucia in the trailers, but Rockstar made sure to give him 2 different clips with Jason in trailer 2. Let's take a look at these first and figure out what they mean. Clip 1 is where Jason meets with Draquan and some of his connections from the streets. One of the other guys accuses Jason of being a Fed. We can assume that Draquan is mediating here and wants them to work together with Jason on some missions. There's an interesting parallel here, because he found real dimes and introduced Booby to them in a similar way, except that was unrelated to crime. He can open doors for Jason and Lucia, but that also means he's the one controlling people's opportunities. Being a middleman also matches his background of being a dealer. Clip 2 is of Jason and Draquan by themselves, reacting to a video on social media. Most likely, it was real dimes that posted whatever they're reacting to. Their reaction seems not only shocked, but somewhat negative. But the important part is this demonstrates how close Draquan and Jason will become. They're hanging out alone with each other at a casual setting like the beach, and they even react to the video in the exact same way. But why wasn't Lucia present in either of those clips? Because Rockstar wants some of these supporting casts to strain Jason and Lucia's relationship. If they were always together with Draquan, they'd be totally aligned on how to deal with him. No internal tension. I expect Lucia to be skeptical of him before Jason is, and she'll turn out to be right. Let's examine Draquan's behavior. He's described as more of a hustler than a gangster. Although he used to be involved in crime on the streets, he apparently did that to make ends meet until he could break into music. This means he's willing to use backdoor methods to achieve his goal. It would be one thing if Draquan did crime, then settled into his role with Booby and Only Raw Records. It's legal, makes a good amount of money, and is in his desired field. But no, he wants even more, after he already broke into music. The fact that he's looking for a way to keep ascending when his current situation with Booby looks really good is a huge red flag. Jason wanted out from under Brian because that was a predatory relationship, where Brian controlled him all the way down to his housing. Despite all the power Booby has, he's willing to meet Draquan on roughly equal ground with Only Raw Records. Meanwhile, Draquan is setting his sights on all of Vice City, in other words, what Booby currently possesses. The most important part of all is Draquan's incentive for betrayal. He'll recruit Jason and Lucia to take down Booby, proposing that it helps all 3 of them. If they're successful in defeating Booby and taking some or all of his empire, what happens after? At this point, Jason and Lucia will have repeatedly risked their necks for Draquan. Draquan either needs to repay that debt or take out the person he's indebted to. For someone who won't be satisfied until he has everything, what do you expect him to do? This leads into the real problem with Draquan. Everything he ever had was borrowed from someone else. He needed his connections from the streets that we saw in clip 1, until he could ditch the streets to work with Booby. He needed Booby to give him his current role with Only Raw Records. He's relying on real dimes to give Only Raw a hit, instead of recruiting several different artists. And now, he needs Jason and Lucia to help him go even higher. Betraying Jason and Lucia gives him the ultimate incentive. He'll have completely inherited whatever they have, plus whatever Booby has in terms of both money and power. He'll achieve his full dream without owing anyone because they're all dead. The tragic part is that Draquan is meant to be a mirror image of Jason and Lucia's trajectory, and they all want to move up as much as possible. His ambition even makes him likable, because we as GTA players want to embody that trait. But the truth is that he's a cautionary tale about what happens when you keep borrowing from people and creating debt, instead of being able to provide your own value. If you want to see more videos like this, hit the like button and subscribe. I've got a lot more to say about GTA 6 before it comes out.